Hi, and welcome to How to Improve Science Performance Through Strategic Note-Taking.
This begins our lecture on kinetic and potential energy. Today we're going to talk about energy. We use the idea of energy to help us describe how and why things behave the way they do. Please take note. Energy can be defined as the ability to cause change. There are many forms of energy, and each of the forms can cause change. Today we are going to look at two forms of energy, kinetic and potential energy. Please write this down. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. An object that moves has kinetic energy. When you walk, when you run, swim, jump, you have kinetic energy. It is important to know that the faster the object moves, the more kinetic energy it has. So kinetic energy is directly related to the velocity of an object. In baseball, for example, a fastball has more kinetic energy than a slow curve. You have more kinetic energy when you run than when you're just walking. Please take note. Potential energy is the energy of position. Potential energy is also known as stored energy. An object can have stored energy because of these two factors. Number one, its position, and number two, its arrangement or its shape. Let's look at a classic example of potential energy. If you were to pick up a brick, imagine my erasers and a brick. If you were to pick up a brick and hold it up, that brick would actually have potential energy. It would have stored energy because of its position. When it's on the ground, the brick cannot force anything to move or change. When you pick it up, you apply force. I'm applying the force. And you lift the object. You did the work, or I did the work in this case. That work added energy to the brick. Once the brick is in a higher/new position, we would say that the energy was added to the brick. And it is now stored in the brick as potential energy. Now the brick can do something it couldn't do before. It can fall. And in falling, it exerts forces and can do work on other objects. Please write this down. Potential energy that is dependent on the height above Earth's surface is called gravitational potential energy. One more time. Gravitational potential energy is potential energy that is dependent on the height above Earth's surface. Suspension bridges, wrecking balls before it's let go, or even a dam before it is released, all have gravitational potential energy. In fact, any object that is being held above Earth's surface has gravitational potential energy. Let's look at another example. Think about a rubber band just lying there. It cannot force anything to move or to change. However, if you pull back on the rubber band and hold it, it now has stored energy. The energy you use to stretch the rubber band becomes stored in the rubber band as potential energy because of its arrangement or its shape. Please write this down. Potential energy stored in a stretched rubber band is called elastic potential energy. one more time. Elastic potential energy is potential energy that is stored in things like a stretched rubber band. Elastic potential energy can be stored in stretched springs. Imagine a spring, pushing it down and holding it. It's not moving, but it has potential energy or stored energy in it because of its shape. Just like the rubber band, if you let it go, it will cause a movement. A spring, if you push it down and then let go, it would cause a movement. In fact, any object that can be forced into a shape that is different than its natural shape can have elastic potential energy. Now let's talk about energy conversions. Write this down. Changes in forms of energy are called energy conversions. So energy conversions are any change in forms of energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion, and potential energy is the energy of position. These two forms of energy are constantly being converted or changed from one to the other. Think of a ball or tossing a ball up into the air, just like this. When you throw the ball up, you give it kinetic energy, or the energy of movement. As the ball rises, it actually starts to slow down. At the top of its path, the ball has slowed down to 0 velocity and 0 kinetic energy. It's that point right here where it's actually changing its direction. For a split second, it's not going up and it's not going down. At this position, not going up, not going down, 0 speed, 0 kinetic energy, we call this position maximum potential energy because it now has potential because of its position. So please write this down. Maximum potential energy is reached when an object is at its highest point of stored energy. So this position. That is maximum potential energy. When the ball begins to fall, this part of the arc, as it gets closer to Earth's surface, its potential energy decreases, but it is speeding up at the same time. Therefore, its kinetic energy is increasing. When you actually catch it, or if somebody was here to catch it, it has reached its maximum kinetic energy. You must know that maximum kinetic energy is reached when an object reaches its highest velocity. So this is our maximum kinetic energy. There are many examples of kinetic and potential energy conversions all around us. A pendulum swinging back and forth is constantly changing from kinetic to potential energy. A diver on a diving board, before they spring, they are constantly converting back and forth from kinetic to potential energy as the diving board flexes. Let's now review what we've learned. Okay. Energy is the ability to cause change. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. Potential energy is the energy of position or stored energy. Kinetic energy, there are two types of potential energy: gravitational potential energy and elastic potential energy. Energy conversions are changes in a form of energy. Throwing a ball is an example of a kinetic and potential energy conversion. Finally, maximum potential energy can be reached when an object is at its highest point of stored energy. And maximum kinetic energy is reached when an object reaches its highest velocity. That concludes our lecture on kinetic and potential energy.